Hello folks, it's Sean here on the Real Politic again. So hope you are all having a nice day. Coming to you from the north of England, which come here quite a lot. It's a lovely place. My wife is from this part of the world, and it's always very lovely. It all seems to be drier as well in the west coast of Scotland. So which is interesting topics of area we're considering what I'm going to talk about today. So there's obviously major elections coming up in the UK next month, and I was looking at the latest polling, and so sorry, just excuse me while I climb up this bank, don't lose my footing, always walking and talking. So looking at the latest pollings for the Scottish parliamentary election today, and YouGov, Survation, Ipsos, they all have it as either a majority for the SNP coming up, or within the margin of error. But then when you consider the vote share, that it's considered the SNP will either get a majority, so into the kind of high 60s seats in the Scottish Parliament. I believe it's 65 you need a majority, and the Scottish Greens are considered to be aiming for somewhere between 13 to 17 seats. So when that's considered as well, that's a majority of pro-independence parties, if not even just an SNP majority themselves, which is one of the tasks that First Minister John Swinney has set himself out for. So that's going to possibly put the cat amongst the pigeons as regards to the demands for a new independence referendum. So I believe that all of you guys who will watch my channel will no doubt keep up with current events and politics, and you'll know that there was a 2014 vote which was defeated almost 55 to 45 in favour of no for independence in 2014 in Scotland. But then since then, obviously, there's been some major changes in the UK. Obviously things that affect all the world, considering the COVID pandemic. But then there was the rather, well, in my opinion, disastrous European Union exit at the height of the pandemic without a real deal in place, which has made the majority of UK citizens somewhere between 4 to 8% poorer. So there's quite a lot of change, and it was viewed as a generational vote, the Scottish independence referendum. But now that's subject to, opinion, isn't it? Subjective opinion on what a generation classes, or if there was a quantum difference, really. So it's going to be an interesting election. So very briefly, I'll touch on kind of some of the topics affecting this. It did really I did a short video in October or November stating that I believe the SNP would form a minority government come the elections in Scotland. I didn't believe they were going to get a majority, and probably was looking a bit too much into the 2024 general election, where SNP were trounced by Labour in Scotland, lost significant ground that they had held. But I suppose you can put that in a microcosm that I suppose many people across the island of Great Britain wanted rid of the Tories. They were desperate, they'd run out of ideas. It was just a kind of rotating carousel of the same washed up ministers that hadn't had any ideas in the first place. Now, a good chunk of them are now in reform, actually. And I suppose then, since then, people tend to think that Starmer is a bit of a weak leader, although he's got a bit of a bounce back with the his sort of relationship with Trump, and how he's kept the UK out of further American sort of military conflicts of recent months. So, but in general, Labour have not been found to be very popular, and so that's affected the Labour Party in Scotland. They might have thought they were on course to really make ground, but it's actually going the opposite way. It doesn't look like they're going to do particularly well, and reform, much like in a lot of places, are going to make a bit of ground in Scotland. I think the Tories are going to be in real trouble. So how does that affect generally the SNP? Well, they've managed to make themselves look strong by keeping to the same kind of principles that they've talked. They've got an experienced salt in John Swinney in charge. Not everyone's cup of tea, but he's been around the block. I believe he's generally respected amongst sort of friend and foe, and he's not said or done anything bombastic. He's kind kind of kept his cards close to his chest, but he's getting a little bit more, he's up in the ante toward this election. And a big part of that is he's painting Scotland in general and the SNP in particular as the sort of anti-reform. People in Scotland are worried about reform in general. I think that there is obviously a core that are going to vote for them, but where they fall down perhaps in Scotland, and I've touched on this before, compared to England, is that perhaps, in comparison to the Conservative and Unionist Party, as their true name is, Reform really do seem to come across as an English nationalist party. And that's possibly where they're going to, so the SNP are using this as, a bit of a boogeyman and pushing themselves against reform and thinking, telling Scotland that they don't need to be going in the same political direction as the rest of the UK. And it's working. So according to these polls, I believe most of these polling sites had the SNP at sort of 63, 64, some of them as high as 65, 66. So, and with the support of the Greens, it will be a pro-independence bloc, unless something catastrophic happens within the next kind of 3 weeks. Now, this takes me on nicely to an interview I just seen there, which is interesting. So, look, everybody's got their political opinions, right? I take information from all sources, but I'm not going to pretend that that I have no sort of skin in the game. Like, I wasn't a fan of the Conservative government, and I do not and did not wish Labour ill within Westminster, but I thought it was interesting to hear Wes Streeting, the health minister, come on LBC and say to, I believe it was either today or yesterday, because I've only just seen the interview today, that he said that Scotland will not be getting another independence referendum. And he was hard pushed by the interviewer, was saying, so it doesn't matter how many pro-independence politicians they vote in, how many times that they have these elections where the SNP and the Scottish Greens are in winning positions to support each other for an independence bloc. He said, we're just not going to have one. And the interesting thing that he did then after that was, in the same sentence, in the same context, I believe it literally was the same sentence, he compared the chaos of a Scottish independence referendum to the Ukraine war and the pandemic. Now, this is just ludicrous. I mean, I think that it is a undefensible position for a politician from out with Scotland to say that they're just not getting an election, just not getting a referendum, sorry. That is against the UN Charter of Self-Determination, the right to self-determination in the UN Charter, not the UN Charter of Self-Determination. And obviously the 2022 Supreme Court judgment came down that it's only the Westminster Parliament who can that is sovereign and can dictate when there can be an independence referendum. That does seem slightly contrary. I'm not a legal expert, to the right of self-determination. I remember being disappointed with that and not quite getting it. But I suppose the legal standpoint is that the Parliament of the UK represents all the constituent nations of the United Kingdom. But at what point, nobody in Scotland would advocate some kind of armed resistance or rebellion. That's never going to happen. But there are people who are passionate about Scotland becoming independent, determine their own future, and it's not about tablet and iron brew and bagpipes. It's probably more about being a more socially aligned country. Being worried about the direction of people drinking the Trump Kool-Aid from the fire hydrant down south, and so I am no SNP adherent. I'm not a party member. But I'm really struggling to see how Wes Streeting can come out and say that there is that you're not going to get one. You're not going to get an independence referendum. Doesn't matter the result of the Scottish Parliament. That seems a bit of a indefensible position, really. And to compare the perceived chaos of a Scottish independence referendum to the war in Ukraine and the suffering of the pandemic is just madness. It's just madness. I'm not going to say what my job is. I work in healthcare. I seen a lot of people die during the COVID pandemic. It was tough. I think it was tougher for some other people in professions close to aligned to mine as well. You know, and yeah, lots of people seen relatives either get very sick, long-lasting sickness, or die. Is that going to be the same as the Scottish parliamentary election? Like, you know, the battlefields of Ukraine, is that the same impact as the Scottish independence referendum? I don't understand. If this is the party line and this is what they are going to put out there, then, you know, like I say, I don't wish Labour ill at all, but I don't understand how they can take these positions. That was a ludicrous thing to say. So, just wanted to put that out there. It's something that's looming up. So just to kind of summarise, it does seem that the sort of pro-independence bloc are on for a bigger win than was anticipated. You know, just a few months ago, that Labour probably are not going to come anywhere close to, you know, keeping their sort of ground in Scotland, and that the independence campaign, whether people like it or not, is going to certainly be heating up in the next, you know, few months. Okay, so watch this space. I did do a larger video recently where I talked about the disunited United Kingdom. You know, so we'll see what the outcome is of special elections in England. I believe that Reform are going to make some serious ground, and we'll see what happens in Scotland and also Wales, which I know less about, but we could end up with basically pro-independence or Irish unification parties in charge of each of the devolved nations of the United Kingdom. Okay, so like and subscribe, take it easy, see you next time.